Yes, welcome in. Badgers still on break here. Going to be back here in a few weeks. I assume, Jesse, that's accurate, right? They're on break here for a little bit. They're going to be coming back for winter workout or for summer workouts here very, very quickly.
Yep, they should be back over the weekend and getting back into the grind this coming week. So no rest for the weary. I know some of the older guys graduated a week ago. You get to go home for a little bit of time, but it's a year-round gig if you're a Division I football player.
And then those 8 or 9 true freshmen that weren't here already will be here very soon as well. Probably first week of June, I would assume, after school gets done wherever they're at. So the whole team will be together and going through what they go through during the summer. Then they have those little OTAs that they do leading into fall camp, and also Las Vegas for the Big Ten Media Days. I hope that's a one-off. I hope it's one-off. I'm not going to complain about it. It's a really fun event. Usually when it's in Indianapolis, it's really valuable. We'll see how it works out in Las Vegas. But it's also a busy May and June for recruiting. And we'll get into, as those start to come in, we'll get into a little bit more. Wisconsin did add another commit here this week. We'll talk about him a little bit. And then also going to be starting our series that I got an idea from you. It wasn't necessarily your idea, Jesse, but it was off of something that you did a couple years ago. And it was when Wisconsin went away from a fullback, and there was going to be no more fullbacks in the air raid offense. You talked to a bunch of the ones that had done so much at Wisconsin. And I came across that story at a website that doesn't exist anymore.
Like Lord Voldemort.
For me or anybody that cares about Jesse, it doesn't exist anymore. And I wanted to be like, well, they're kind of introducing it back in here a little bit. Again, it's not a true fullback. There's still no fullback listed on the roster, but we know Jackson Aker is going to do a lot of this stuff that he was doing before. So I thought it'd be fun to catch up with some of the guys that you talked to and hear them and discuss with them about the offensive change, but also their playing memories. So their favorite games, what it means to be a fullback, all that stuff. And the first one obviously had to be Matt Bernstein because me and him started this podcast in 2017. He's obviously got another podcast now that he does called Believe in Badgers, and they always have great guests. So if you haven't heard about that, go check him out. But he is a character. I love Bernie and love talking to Bernie, and so I did that for about 35 minutes last week, and going to be a part of this episode, and going to be talking to others here throughout the next few weeks and into June as we're trying to take care of the off season here a little bit. So that's going to be coming up. But first, I wanted to jump into this. I've seen it a couple different places with some other teams, but Wisconsin, I think, is under quite a bit of pressure this year, specifically Luke Fickell, right? Because of what has happened these first two seasons. But I think there's also some players under pressure. Guys, whether it's their final year at Wisconsin, in college, and trying to find a way into the NFL, there are a number of guys that I think are under pressure, and I wanted to get your take on some of them as we look at this roster right now. Is there a guy that stands out above any other that you think is under the most pressure heading into 2025?
To me, without question, it starts with the quarterback, which is probably the answer the last two off seasons as well. But you brought in Billy Edwards Jr., who's got 1 year of eligibility left with a new offense, and he's your guy from day one. So if this offense is going to function well, yes, having multiple tight ends and running backs and all the pre-snap motion wide receivers, that's important. But you need a quarterback who's going to deliver consistently and give Wisconsin a chance. And so I think very obviously it starts with him. And as we've discussed, all the leadership qualities are there. We had him on the show at the start of the off season when he first arrived in Madison. You can hear how intelligent he is and how good he is with the media. But ultimately, what's going to matter is what you do between the lines, and can you be consistent, avoid those catastrophic decisions, as Kenny Guyton said. So I think it's got to start with the quarterback, even though this offense is now designed to take a lot of the pressure off the quarterback in ways that this offense was not able to do the last 2 years.
What are your expectations for Billy Edwards? I mean, what would constitute a good season? What would constitute a successful season for him, do you think? And I guess that I'll give you a chance to think about it for a second, but like, I don't even know if I'm talking about numbers. I guess I'm talking about maybe it's numbers, and then maybe it's also team success and offensive improvement. But what does that look like?
I look at what he did at Maryland a year ago, and the first couple months of the season, I think he was, for the most part, excellent. And then obviously, look, Maryland wasn't a very good team. He didn't have great offensive line play, didn't have great running game, and that's going to impact your ability as a quarterback. And the numbers declined significantly over the last month. But if you look at what he did those first couple of months, I think doing that, so limiting the mistakes. It's not like I think he's going to throw 2 touchdowns a game, and this is going to be a quarterback who's going to throw 22 touchdowns this year. We know that the distribution offensively is going to be a little bit different with how much they want to emphasize the run game. I just think it's taking advantage of those opportunities. So statistically, I don't know what that looks like. If you said 15 touchdowns this season and 6 interceptions, like those aren't going to blow you off the page there, right? Those numbers. But I think that you need solid quarterback play that can complement everything else this offense can be.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the historical numbers for Wisconsin quarterbacks, and when you said 15 touchdowns and you said 6 interceptions, I immediately thought of Scott Tolzien. I actually thought he had a better 2009 than he did, but he had 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 2010. That was a pretty good team that year, but it obviously was because they didn't rely on him to make every single play. Now, considering all Wisconsin quarterbacks in the history of Wisconsin, he was actually a pretty good one. Set the pass efficiency mark and then was broken, obviously, by Russell Wilson, and obviously has since been broken by others. But the touchdown interception ratio there, pretty impressive. But it means that you're getting production from other places. 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, that's not huge numbers. But when you nearly have 3 1,000-yard rushers, it makes it much easier on the quarterback. And so I guess my next place of pressure would be on the offensive line. And I don't know that I would pick any one particular guy. Maybe it's a leader. Maybe it's the left tackle, because you don't have Kevin Haywood there. Maybe there's pressure on that guy to produce. But this running game has to be better than it has been these last. I would go all the way back to 22, because it wasn't great the entire year, and there were some injuries there certainly, but it, I think, comes down to the offensive line and being able to take that pressure off of the quarterback and make it a little bit easier for him, because I think they do have some running backs that can produce. They just have to be given a chance, and the running game the last couple of years hasn't been great. So hopefully for Wisconsin is they get back to this power and pushing people around, and I think that's certainly the goal.
I'm glad you brought up the offensive line, because that's where I would have gone as well. If I had to pick an individual, it's got to be the left tackle, whoever that ultimately is. You're protecting the blind side of Billy Edwards Jr. You're going into a role that's going to be way different for you. If I had to pick right now, months out from the season, I think it's going to be Davis Heinsohn, the transfer they brought in from Central Michigan. I talked to him this offseason. They told him what was up, right? Our previous starter, our projected starter, Kevin Haywood, is got an ACL injury. We're not going to have him available. We need someone with veteran experience. And this is someone who started 30 plus games at CMU. They're not bringing someone with 1 year of eligibility come in and not be the starter. Now, he's going to have to earn it. But if you look at the other options, it's reconfiguring your offensive line, in all honesty. And we've talked about this. Do you throw Joe Brunner out there and then you're changing around your guard rotation? But I think someone like Heinsohn is the one that I would look at. You know what you have for the most part with 3 of those starters: Riley Mahlman, Jake Renfro, Joe Brunner. That's a pretty damn good base to build around for any Wisconsin offensive line. I understand the line the last couple of years, and really longer than that, hasn't met what the expectations are for a Wisconsin offensive line, which is one of the greatest O-lines in college football, because that's just because of what we saw for so long. But you start with those 3. The right guard spot is still up for grabs with the 3 guys that we saw: Kerry Kadenko, Emerson Mandel, JP Benchwall. But I think you got to start with left tackle, just because we don't know what to expect from that position, because we didn't have a chance to see Davis. He's a spring transfer portal addition.
So you think it's going to be him? And I don't know how really anyone could disagree. You're bringing him for a reason. And I'm sure there will be competition there. And if it doesn't look the way it needs to with him, I think it's potentially they move Joe Brunner out there. We'll see. I mean, they did some of that towards the end of spring after Kevin Haywood's injury. So we'll see exactly how they want to configure that spot in that entire line. But the pressure is on them to be able to have an offense that can lean on that group and lean and be the group that Wisconsin has had for, you would think, last 30 years. You want to be able to lean on the offensive line. And Luke Fickell's talked about that all the time, wanting to lean on them. And they just haven't been able to do that necessarily. And I don't know that that's necessarily their fault the last couple of years, just because it's a system that wasn't necessarily accentuating the traits, maybe perhaps their best traits. But this one, it feels like will, and we'll see if they're able to put it all together.
I think that's the other part of this too, Zach, is you have to factor in what we saw the last 2 years. What they're being asked to do this year, it not only is so much different from what we saw the last couple of years, but just aligns with what Wisconsin offensive line play generally is about, what a lot of these older guys came here for. And I realize there's not necessarily a lot of them left, but like in the previous offense, they were asking the offensive line essentially to hit landmarks, like go to your space and do your job that way. And now it's, for lack of a better way to put it, taking the fight to those guys. And maybe we heard that a little bit more last year, but let's be honest, it was still the same offense, even if you had a different offensive line coach. We saw in the spring, what is this offense predicated on? Well, it's much more smash mouth. And I do think when you have two tight end sets, how much does that help the offensive line in so many different ways? And same with the fullback. And even if you put Billy Edwards Jr. under center, he's at least involved in a different way than what they would have the quarterback do previously. So I think all those pieces to the puzzle are going to help the offensive line in a way that they could not have that type of help the last 2 years, because you can have 11 people on the field. How are you going to deploy them? A lot of it the last few years was spread people out, but that takes away the advantage that the offensive line traditionally had at Wisconsin.
Yeah. And I know when they brought that offense in, we were talking all about Braylon Allen's not going to see 8-man boxes anymore. And, maybe they're going to go back to having to see some 8-man boxes, but it's all a bit of a trade-off. But I think the play action game has to be a big part of this offense too. And we'll see exactly what, we'll see. We'll see. Other positions offensively, you could say Tucker Ashcraft, you could say Lance Mason coming in. I would also say out at wide receiver, maybe there's pressure on Vinny Anthony just to put a second great season together. But I think it's whoever is opposite him. Who is the other big-time receiver, or let's just say big-time receiver? Who's the other starter who's going to give Billy Edwards someone to challenge defenses with? And I think if I had to say it right now, I would say
Jaden Ballard.
Thank you. Good Lord. I had it right there. I was about to say Jalen. But yeah, Jaden Ballard would be the guy that I would point to and say there's some pressure on him to produce because of what we saw in the spring a little bit.
Yeah, you could go down each position and there's varying degrees of pressure. I think we know generally what to expect from Vinny. I don't know from a number standpoint what it's going to look like, just because it's a different offense, right? They're going to run the ball more. They're going to potentially utilize tight ends in different ways. But the Ballard one is interesting because we saw multiple occasions where he took the top off the defense this spring. He had a practice where he caught 3 touchdown passes, all of them long gains. I know that Chris Brooks Jr., if I had to pick those two guys, it feels like are the ones battling it out most for the other starting spot. And Jordan Reed, the wide receivers coach, did say that Chris was the standard of the room. But from a skill set standpoint, I don't think there's anybody else who can do downfield what Ballard can do. Now, can you do some of the other things, expand your route tree, make those tough catches over the middle? I think Brooks can really thrive there because he's got a tight end body. But I would put it on Ballard. You've spent your entire career at Ohio State where you have 11 catches in 4 years. You're not coming here with 1 year of eligibility left to sit. So how much of an impact can you make? Because if you can be a difference maker, it takes so much pressure off everybody else. Vinny Anthony doesn't have to consistently be the go-to guy. Maybe they start double covering him and there's a slot receiver who's open. So yeah, I would certainly put him high on the list.
On the other side of the ball, again, this is kind of goes back to the offensive line. I could say the entire defensive line too, just because of how bit of a struggle it was last year to stop the run. But I'm going to go to the linebackers, and I'm going to go to Christian Allegro, because they need a guy to stand up and be the leader of that defense. Jake Chaney was that to an extent last year. They have not necessarily the last couple of years have not met the standard of what an inside linebacker at Wisconsin had become. And I think they need a guy to step to the forefront and be that guy. And I think that's him. Now, again, it could be Tackett Curtis as well. They both are guys that are going to fly around the ball. And it's not just them, it's the defensive line too. But I think there's some pressure on Christian Allegro to be a leader on this defense and be a leader of the front seven that, has so many new faces up there.
Wisconsin's best defenses traditionally have had all Big Ten linebackers, and we were all spoiled for so long because every year they would just roll guys in, whether it was multiple outside linebackers who are definitely getting paid in the NFL now, but even the inside backer combination a few years ago of Jack Sanborn and Leo Chanel, they have not had that the last few years, and you can see the difference. Certainly, again, much like the offense, many pieces to this puzzle. If the defensive line isn't doing its job, that's going to make it harder for the linebackers. But I'm with you with Christian Allegro. I know he's working on the leadership aspect of it. When you become an upperclassman, when you're the guy people are looking to, athletically, he's an absolute freak. I think we've known that for a while. And now he's going to get all the opportunity in the world. A lot of the reps that we saw in the spring were putting him on the field next to Tackett Curtis. Maybe you have an Aaron Witt at the other spot playing off the ball, but they can rotate. But I would certainly expect him to get the lion's share of the snaps. And I said this before, but I'll be shocked if he's not the team's leading tackler. Where are those tackles coming from, though? If it's 8 yards down the field, you're in trouble. But if you can wreak some havoc and put the offense in difficult spots where they got to punt it away, that's going to be advantageous for everyone. So I think he's the guy you look at and say, you got to take a big step forward. And now, is he a first team all Big Ten linebacker this year? I don't know, but he absolutely is at the top of the front seven.
I think it's going to be impossible. Like, it's going to be impossible to be a first team player in this conference right now, unless you are like a future first round pick. It just feels like it's going to be really, really difficult just because there's 18 teams and there's so much talent. So you're right. He probably isn't going to be a first team all Big Ten linebacker, but you're right. How many tackles did he have against Iowa? Was it 16? He had 16 tackles.
I think it was the most since Leo Chanel's absurd game against Army.
Yes. Where he was jumping the snap count and just like practically tackling the quarterback as soon as he got the ball. That was as freaky as it gets. His Purdue game that year was also quite freaky. He is a freak. Leo Chanel's a freak. But what's up?
Always has been, man.
Yeah, for sure. But Allegro, that game, where did those tackles come from? As you said, 8 yards down the field, sometimes 10, sometimes 15, unfortunately, because Wisconsin couldn't stop the run. But I think there is pressure on him. And then I think there's pressure, and I don't know who you want to throw in here because they have a bunch of different guys that get put out there, but their pass rush has to be better than it was last year. And so, I mean, you could put it on Darrell Peterson because coming into last year, he was their most productive pass rusher in his previous 2 years. And then him and the rest of the outside linebackers were non-existent last year in getting after the quarterback. So, I mean, I guess we could say Darrell Peterson, maybe Sebastian Cheeks, maybe Tyrese Fearbury. Like, you could put a bunch of different guys out there and say the pressure's on them. Any one particular guy stand out for you?
The one that I was thinking about was Corey Walker. And look, we've talked about this throughout the spring. The way that they are deploying players is different from what we've seen. So they have these quote unquote edge guys. And so, yes, you're a defensive lineman that they brought in, but that really they're outside linebackers who just happen to be 297, 300 pounds. I just think a guy like that has to be so important to setting the edge. And the thing is, that will be tough to discern the effectiveness because I don't think the stats are going to be massive. It's one of those like doesn't show up on the box score necessarily. That's not to say he can't be an impact playmaker, but can someone that big with that type of movement be able to set the edge and create for some of those other guys so an Allegro can come up and make the stop for a 1 yard loss instead of a 7 yard gain? I think he is as important as any of the guys that they brought in. Now, there are other players that I like along the defensive line, certainly. Suggs and Perkins come to mind, but just how they're using him, he seems like he's going to be a big factor here.
Yeah, I would agree. He is a guy that have outside on early downs and move inside in pass rushing downs if they want to get into their nickel, and so they can bring in some outside rushers. But you're right. I think he's a guy that's going to have he's going to get a lot of playing time this year. I think he's going to have a lot of snaps. I wouldn't doubt if he ends up leading the defensive line in snaps because of his versatility, but we'll see. And then in the secondary, I think it's Ricardo Hallman. He came into last year coming off an All-American year. He almost went pro. Obviously had the shoulder injury that kept him out pretty much all of spring ball, and wasn't able to lift a ton upper body wise, and then had a season that was some of that his fault, some of that not his fault. Teams went after Nazir Forkering. Teams went after the slot. They didn't challenge Ricardo Hallman as much as they did the year before. But when teams did, they actually had some success, right? Like Alabama had some success, and Minnesota had some success. So I think he's got some pressure on him, and he's a bigger guy now, certainly bigger than he was at this time last year. I think there's a lot of pressure on him because he's got an opportunity to show that last year was a fluke, and that he is the player that he was the year before when he had those 7 interceptions, and he was a third-team All-American by the Associated Press. I think there's definitely a lot of pressure on him to be that guy.
I was going to split this vote in the secondary between Hallman and Forkering because what's going to happen if they don't throw toward Hallman, which for the most part they didn't last year. Yes, we've talked about some of those games. They tried him and he didn't get the stops that he wanted. But generally speaking, there were very few corners in the Big Ten that were targeted less than Hallman. So where's it going to go? Well, Forkering is that guy. And he's got just as much that he wants to prove too, coming back for another year, trying to make the NFL. I think he's got the talent and the body and the physicality if he can put it on film for another year. But both of those guys, because if you want to, what made Wisconsin so good for so long defensively? So many different things, but keeping the play in front of you, not giving up that huge play. And those are the two guys that I look at and say they absolutely have that ability. Rico just looks like a different dude in the spring. Yes, physically, and he's not getting any taller. He's 5'11" or whatever they list him at, but gained 5+ pounds. He just looks stacked, and you saw it in the confidence that he played with. And he's been a multi-year starter. He's been here forever. So I would certainly put those two guys at the top on the back end because they're consistently going to be tested.
What do you think they'd list you at on the roster?
Height-wise? Well, I'm trying to think what I was on the college roster. Maybe I gained an inch over time. I don't know if they ever listed me at 5'10". That would be extremely generous. 5'9" would also be generous, but I think I was 5'9" on the roster.
So definitely probably the like 5'10", 5'11" at UW.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've put on the pounds and not in a good way like Rico Hallman.
So I would agree with that. I do think there's also some pressure on whoever ends up winning that slot job. And there's pressure on Wisconsin to find a guy that would allow Austin Brown to be a safety and not force him into having to play the slot as much. Even though he was fine at it, I just think if you could find somebody else to do that and have like a guy that you can count on and throw him out there, which they thought they had Max Lofi last year, and it obviously because he had a great spring and it was okay, it was solid in fall camp, but it just never turned into being the guy, and it forced Austin Brown out there. So, and then obviously we're going to see Ricardo Hallman perhaps in there a little bit as well. There are some options there, but I think Jameer Latimer, like he got some of those opportunities. I think that's another spot where you could sit there and say there's pressure on that guy. But again, we go up and down the roster. You could say there's pressure on every little guy. But in terms of the secondary, I think it starts with Ricardo Hallman. So
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. Special teams wise?
I mean, Vaco's got to deliver, man. Anywhere from 31 to 49 yards.
And anything over, I mean, he did hit a couple 50s during spring, but Gavin Lom's just got an absolutely generous, like also pressure on the punt returner. Catch the ball. No one cares if you take it for 1 yard or 5 yards or 10 yards. As long as you have the ball at the end of the play, that's all that matters. That cost them a win last year, in my opinion. Like, I think that it also won them a game because the other team also couldn't hold on to the ball. But yeah, the USC game. Oof. Yeah. Either way, all right. Let's transition. You're going to jump into my interview with Matt Bernstein, and then we'll come back on the other side, talk a little recruiting. But here he is, Matt Bernstein. And we do welcome in a special guest. It is the guy that made this podcast actually begin. As is the case now, was the case back in 2017. Nobody really cares what I have to say, but they cared what this guy had to say. It is Matt Bernstein, one of our fullbacks that we're going to be talking to here over the next few weeks, because the fullback is kind of back at Wisconsin after 2 years of being MIA. It is the Hebrew Hammer. Matt, appreciate you jumping on, man.
Zach, I love seeing you, dude. What we did now it seems like a decade ago almost, sadly is. Man, I'll come and talk to anybody about the fullback position. I don't care what they call it at Wisconsin. It is the fullback position. It's not an H-back. It's not a flex. Let's be real. I want FB on my Letterman jacket. Actually, that's a good idea. I might stencil it on there on my own.
Yes, fullback is back kind of. Before we jump into this, before we jump into everything, I wanted to catch up with what you're up to. Obviously, anybody that covers or watches or cares about the Badgers knows about the podcast that you do, Believe Badgers. Ton of great guests. You guys do a ton of great interviews. It feels like every week you have another great interview. So you're doing that, obviously. Go check that out if you guys have time. And I'm sure you will, because it's the summer. So go check them out. Those are kind of like everlast, right? Like they evergreen, I should say. They are good to go for as long as you want. But other than that, what are you up to?
So I feel very fortunate in life. I grew up in New York. I had the best experience coming to Wisconsin, playing fullback. I mean, for a team with some superstars. And now I work for the university. I actually fundraise. It's people are like, oh, you raise money. Yeah, but it's actually great because most of the time I just talk Wisconsin to people and they want to give back because it's something awesome to do. And my niche is Hillel, which is pretty cool because I'm a Jewish kid from New York, and that's the Jewish Learning Center on campus. So it's a very unique position for the foundation, but for that niche. But I can raise money for everything. Zach, if you came to me, you're like, I want to do athletics, I want to do libraries, I want to do unions. You can do all these cool things. So it's great. I got 2 young kids who run my show, 2 daughters. One would be like the best football player ever. We do helmets. We hit our heads every day. She loves it. Yeah. And then the Believe in Badgers podcast, BLEAV. It's just a passion project. We have a really good time with it. Bringing back the old dudes who didn't have a cell phone or even a computer, like Don Davey. So it's a good time just getting back in touch with all these, the football alumni. Yeah, it's too long of a story there, but
no, you guys do a great job. It's a great podcast. Make sure to check it out. I wanted to start this, and I'm going to start all of these the same way. What does being a fullback mean to you?
To me? Oh, yes. Man. It's like the glue. It's the dude who gets excited for literally running into somebody full speed and making a block, covering people up, letting, I just usually say like Brian Calhoun, AD, like the guys who deserve the accolades, getting them, and scoring touchdowns and winning games without getting any kind of praise. That to me is like what a fullback is. It's that culture. It's the identity. It's, you're kind of a half lineman, you're half running back. Sometimes you might catch a ball. You do pretty much everything. I might be biased, obviously, because I was a fullback, but you really can be everything in an offense. But I think the glue guy is what you really are. Putting your neck out there, running through brick walls to have other people score touchdowns is what it's all about.
So when you got to Wisconsin in 2001, there had already been several really good running backs as part of the Barry Alvarez chain. Did you look up to those guys? Did you look at what they did? Whether it was a Cecil Martin or a Mark Montgomery or Chad Coons. Did you look up to those guys?
I mean, once I got here, it's funny. I was on like AOL.com and it wasn't really looking up people, but the pedigree, right? Like the culture, you knew who those people were. You knew Ron Dane off the bat. Like my dad's an East Coast guy, grew up in Queens, went to Albany, never left the state. And he goes, this is Big Ten football where you need to be. I was like shocked that he even knew Wisconsin, but because the East Coast always delivered a couple guys who were pretty solid. Jimmy Kennedy was a D lineman at Penn State at the time when I was looking, and my dad's like, dude, look at the Big Ten. It's no joke. But once I got here, the culture is like ingrained in you. We would always ask Coach White to watch, film of the older guys. So you had Cecil Martin. You're like, damn, look at this dude. killing people, literally killing people. And then you meet Cecil Martin. He's like the nicest human being you ever met, which is kind of hard for my brain to compute. But yes, looking up to Chad Coons, Russ was there when I was there too. So you had the brothers, but Chad was a technician, probably smaller dude, like 240. It's not really that small anymore, but he must have been like 240, but cut up. I was probably 265, maybe 270, depending on if I ate the night before or not. And Russ was the same. He's probably like 245 cut up, and he was all physicality. So it was kind of nice to watch both of their games and then have Coach White critique both of them and then kind of try to take a little bit of pieces from both of those guys. But the technician part was my hardest thing to figure out. The physicality, the violence of the game. I was ingrained with that in high school. I loved, Zach, I love trying to kill people on the field, legally kill people on the field.
Right. What was the message from Wisconsin when they were recruiting you here to be a fullback? What was their pitch? And I think we've talked. You got some great recruiting stories, but what was Wisconsin's pitch to you to get you to Madison?
Well, they didn't really need a pitch. It was either Syracuse. I'll tell you the pitch. UConn. My dad called UConn. First of all, my dad called Paterno at Penn State, and Penn State's like, we don't want a fullback. We don't need one. It's like, okay, that's the closest big school to us. Rutgers was not even on the board, really. And then Syracuse is like, well, we want you to play D-line. My dad's like, D-line? No, my dad's like, nah, you don't want to go up. You got to drive 6 hours. So the best pitch was those guys saying, and UConn, this is where it comes. UConn said I would never be a good college football player. And once they said that, that's when my dad was like, dude, we just got back from Wisconsin. What are your options? Syracuse? You really want to go there? I was like, I don't know, Dad. Like, you want me to leave? And he's like, hell yeah. UConn says you're never going to be good. Why don't you play at the Big Ten? That's real football. And it was this easy. They were recruiting me as like, what do they call it? An athlete. And, it was a good chuckle because I wasn't really like a side-to-side guy. When you look and you got Bryson Thompson and Nick Grayson, when you show up, I could never be those guys. Like, that wasn't my game. So Coach White's like, listen, we're going to say you're an athlete, but we're really going to put you at fullback. I was like, sold, done. I want to play fullback. Even if it's a blocking back, I wanted to do that.
Who was, and you mentioned a couple of guys, so I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm guessing you're going to probably hedge here, but who's the best running back you blocked for during your time at Wisconsin?
I mean, there's so many good guys. It's impossible to answer. I mean.
See, I told you. I knew what you were going to do. You were going to be like, I don't know.
Like, it's impossible. I mean, the two top tier dudes were AD and Calhoun. I mean, how could you say they both, AD's like what, top 15 rusher of all time, and Calhoun had like one of the best seasons anyone's ever had receiving and catch and rushing. So it's very difficult. I also played 5 games with Calhoun. He tells me this all the time, and he would have won the Heisman if I kept playing, which is probably true. I don't know if that's true or not, but he was.
I like the sound of it.
He was on track. I mean, he was unstoppable. You look at that guy and you're like, this dude can't run C gap to C gap, and he loved it. Like, it was his pride and joy, and he wasn't a huge guy, and he loved that inner, the B gap, the powers, and that's where AD thrived in like jump cuts and zones, and man, so good. Dude, looking at AD, like walk around the locker room without a shirt on, you're like, how does God make people look like this? Like, he could take 4 or 5 off his chest laying on the ground. And even JD at the time, John Detman, was like, holy moly. This guy's a huge muscle. Like Dwayne Smith, imagine what that guy could have done if he didn't get hurt. Even Booker Stanley at the time was pretty solid. But then you also got to go with the fullbacks that I played with. I mean, it was – talk about murderer's row on the defense with Chenal and those guys. I can name 10 guys. Now one of them's kicking down doors for like the FBI. So like, we're all crazy and we love the physical violence. Rhett Meester, Josh Baltz. Who am I forgetting? He played, Chris Presley. Like, you're talking about one after the other. We all took pride in blocking and being a fullback. I know we hedged heavily here. Even Greg Root, like, guys got their time and they shined. And that's what it's all about. And we can pivot into this at some point, and you might ask, but can you do that anymore? Like, can you wait your turn 4 or 5 years, get in a pivotal game, play really well, and then come back and say that you'll be the number 2 for the rest of the season? Like, that's what used to be special. And I think those are what not just Wisconsin, but college football is kind of like off on this now. But man, we had a good running backs room, man. It was pretty wild.
No, it was absolutely wild. There was, you think about some of the great halfbacks or the running backs that came in, maybe like 5-6 years after you guys were done, when it was a Melvin Gordon, a James White, and a Monte Ball all in the same backfield. Maybe they all stick around, but I don't know.
There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then what's also crazy is we like don't ever talk about the gap guys. PJ Hill, who was awesome. John Clay. We don't talk about him because then we jump to probably mostly likely the three best guys besides Dane and maybe some other dudes who who played. I mean, they all played in the NFL. They all were there for forever. They're all superstars. I mean, Melvin Gordon's highlight reel is like disgusting. It's unbelievable.
It is. His 2014 is just, I think, the best season a running back has ever had. And I know that Barry Sanders did what Barry Sanders did. And I know, what Ashton Genty did this past year. But I look at what Melvin did. He didn't have anybody. They didn't have a quarterback for the most part. And I love Joel Stave, all-time wins leader at Wisconsin. Big fan. But, he wasn't there until the middle of the season. And they didn't really truly throw the ball after that. But he had an amazing season. But it reminds me of some of the games that you guys played in, that you specifically played in. And there were some games I wanted to go through. And obviously, the big one is the one on Yom Kippur. But I wanted to talk about a 2003 game that you were in the backfield for, right, in Shaber to Evans. You got in his way. You got in a guy's way, right?
I ran a route. I wouldn't say it's a good route. I was, I was shocked they called the play.
Shaber, yeah.
Well, not just Shaber. I line up in the backfield. I motion to the wing, and I run a 10 to 12 yard out. I'm basically a worthless guy. I've never caught the ball. They've never thrown it to me. And all of a sudden, I don't even break the route, and the ball's thrown because I'm literally slow and worthless out there. And it's, again, Shaber was the third string guy at the point, or the second string guy at this point. And coaches had the chutzpah to literally say, Shaber, we're going to throw this ball to you, and we're going to beat Ohio State's best dude ever on the field.
Yep.
And Lee Evans, you can't. I mean, that dude could run a route on a dime. I mean, he's literally a technician. I've never seen a person do on offense what that man could do as a wide receiver. Like Coach Mason didn't even have to coach him. Like the dude was just perfect. And it was one of the coolest nights I think I've ever been a part of. But that's what I'm hoping for this team. I know I keep bringing it back, but there's no chance. We were never supposed to win that game. That was a night game. They just won the national championship. They're 18-0 in the last 18 games. They're coming to Camp Randall. It's drizzling. We should never. They had all the guys. We had none of the guys. It was one of those days that you can't make up. It was so everyone was teed up. I was trying to literally pummel people. That was one of my favorite games to watch because every hit I was trying to deliver a death blow to these guys because you get so tuned up. Coach White's oh, this is the best linebacker. And he's like, Bernie, what are you going to do? This guy's supposed to be the best. I guess he's just going to blow you up every play. And you laugh at it, but it eats away at you throughout the week. And then you literally just explode. And, Booker Stanley we were running the ball. Stanley had a great game. The O-line, man, 03, 04, those guys are good. Even 05. I don't want to take anything away from 05, but those guys were good, man. And they were physical. They just wanted to really hit people. And I love that. And then you had Joe Thomas, who's one of the best. So
right.
It worked out.
And he was a jumbo tight end that year. He wasn't even starting at that point. He obviously started the next 3 years, but he was the jumbo tight end at that point. So fast forward to, and actually that was an 8 o'clock game. So that was we had an all day. We had all day to get ready. It was wet. It was nasty. It was windy. Half the stadium was completed. They were still working on the renovations and putting the boxes up, and it was just an absolute mess. But what an amazing game. Was actually on the field after the game. So, but to the next year with Penn State and the fasting game. And I think a lot of people have heard all about that. Is there a run that stands out for you? Because you went over 100 yards in that game. All the injuries to AD, Dwayne Smith, go on down the list. Booker Stanley, go on down the list of guys that were not available to play that day. They threw you in there after fasting all day. And you just did your thing. Is there a play that stands out for you?
I mean, there are a bunch of them. Obviously, everyone knows that hurdle play running down towards, the student section. What's cool about that play is, and I've messed this up so many times, Penn State had a linebacker, they ran a 4-3, creep up on the line. And the play was, if they do that and the D end and the tackle slant in, the fullback picks up the guy. I've made this mistake. I've run into the line like 20 different times. Greg Root has sat on the sidelines his entire life, comes in and blocks this guy. I was like shocked that he did it right. But that's just dude's preparing, right? Like he prepared for that moment and he knew what to do. And anyone, you can knock Greg Root. I love the dude to death. He's a smart kid. He might have done some dumb things, but he's a super smart kid. And one of the toughest dudes I've ever met. And he introduced me to my wife. He's like one of my best friends. But knowing that to me is more special than the runs. Because like that run never happens. It was a 20-something yard run. I hurdle Puzzlove's knee or whoever it was. These plays don't happen without guys like Greg Root coming in, who's a 2 for most of his career and doing the right thing. I mean, you could – that Clink scale came up. He's like, just follow me. Every time I didn't follow him, I was tackled. But there's one play that I love that no one will care about. It was a 122 slide draw. And if you watch, I've had like 2 jump cuts and I was getting tackled. I put my hand down and kept running for a couple more yards. To me, that like just a pit, like it just said like this dude will not go down on a day like when this team needs him. But if you look like the O-line, that's the best O-line maybe ever. And they deserve all the credit. Like I was 270 pounds running like a 4.9, so having 123 yards or whatever, 27 yards, it was a special night. But, guys like Greg Root and dude stepping like Darren Charles, I think or J.O. like blocking down the field, like special, man. And Brandon Williams had some huge catches. We couldn't really throw the ball. Like, our offense was kind of stalled. We didn't score that many points. But man, what a night. What a night after too. Like drinking beers with Fowler and Herbstreit is never a negative thing.
Was that the day that he ended up puking at Wando's?
I wasn't there for that because I think we went to the KK after.
Speaking of Herbstreit, yeah. So there, the other play that stands out. There's a ton of games. I could go through a ton of games with you because there were so many memorable games in 03, 04, 05. But the last game that you played in was the Michigan game, another night game, and it ends with a John Stocco draw for a touchdown. Your view of that play, and were you on the field?
No.
You're off, right? Because you were hurting, because you had torn up. Yeah,
I hurt my hips, but I was still playing. I should not have been playing, but I was playing. But that was not 21 personnel or 22. I think it was 11 personnel. It's one of those things. I think Coach Mason called it off the sideline. He's like, just run a draw. They're running out of there. They're not playing the run. They're not respecting it, or we just couldn't do it. I think about the coaching staff. To me, a lot of guys cued in. They've been together forever. There wasn't a lot of huge changes throughout my entire career on the offensive side. So it was just, I thought that was whacked out. I mean, you're on the goal line running it, but it worked. It was awesome. I mean, such a cool play to beat Michigan at home anytime is fantastic. And to win on almost like a up yours type of run, like with the quarterback, what is that? Like the 7-yard line. It's like quarterback draw. Yeah. Like who does that stuff? And I love Stocco. He's not fleet of foot
at all.
So, it's just like, again, it's one of those special things where a guy steps up and coach steps up and makes the right call, and people have confidence in Barry has confidence to call that. It's crazy.
So again, as I said, there was a ton of games. I could stay here all day and talk to you about all the games that stood out, but I wanted to jump back into current day. When you heard Jeff Grimes was coming in as the new OC, and that you knew the fullback would be used kind of. We're going to see a little bit different stuff with Jackson Aker, right? Like he's going to be a little bit of an H-back, maybe some tight end stuff. But we also saw we're going to get fullback dives for the first time in a couple of years. What was your reaction to that hire as a fullback at Wisconsin?
I mean, excited, not just for the fullback position to come back, more for like the physicality to come back. I mean, Grimes is I think he's an O-line his whole life. You know, they run power spread, which to me makes me happy. At least that word power's in there. So I think he brings physicality. From everything I've heard, a lot of dudes are saying this is a much more physical team up front. The offense, you know, I think they moved away with that with the Longo hire. I think we were trying to listen. Everyone's trying to make ripples and win quick and do things that is outside the box. And maybe Phil Longo could have been the guy in 10 years, but we don't have 10 years, right? Nobody's given anyone 10 years. So I love the hire. To have the fullback back, you know, with a guy like Jackson Aker, it makes a lot of sense, man. The guy is versatile. We've seen him. He's changed positions 3 times in his career. He's been a fullback, he's been a halfback, and he's been a tight end. You know, when you look at him in the bowl game at LSU, he was awesome. I have all these high hopes for him. We talked a little bit before. I think he reminds me of like an Alec Ingold, like can do everything.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. 2 back sets. You know, like what did the Giants said it best? Like we can control the defense we see when you put a fullback in. Like, you know, who has they're going to bring a linebacker in. They have to, or else we're just going to run the ball. So I think you'll see some sets that we can control the line of scrimmage maybe a little bit better because there's bigger guys in the game. And Jackson Aker's not a bigger guy, but he can do a lot of things. So it's a dual threat. You gotta match him up.
I think this reminds me of something we did talk about before we came and started recording, was how different is the fullback position now in this offense, or even a couple years ago, than it was when you were playing it? And what are some of the differences, the changes?
You know, I think it depends on the player. But you've seen this change, and I think you saw Cecil. I would say Chad's kind of an outlier. He was a technician. He wasn't a blow you up type of dude. He was a cover you up and make sure you couldn't tackle anyone. And he could catch. You know, he was fast. He could catch. But you had Cecil Martin, physical. So I think you had like these physical dudes like me, Presley, Rentmeester, Baltz. And then down the line, then you got Brady Ewing. And he broke the mold of, we're just going to run. You know, yes, the fullbacks can run. Some of us are tailbacks who just have gained too much weight. Some of us are tailbacks like Presley who just literally were too big physically. Like, guy could bench press 6,000 pounds.
Yeah. Couldn't
hold a football. Like, his chest was too big. It's not his fault. He wasn't heavy. He just couldn't do it. And then you had Brady Ewing, who literally was lined up. Every time he was lined up somewhere else. He was motioning and he could block. He was physical, but he could catch. And he was fast. He could do everything. So it changes the entire game. And I think you've seen a lot of these guys, Alec Ingold, you've seen a lot of them who can do these things more than just be physical and block a linebacker. So I think it's special. And Jackson Aker kind of is that next evolution of, this guy's played all these positions. He could do all these things. So you can line him up anywhere. You can have 12 personnel in with him, or you can have 11 personnel with him. And it doesn't make any sense. It's so hard for a defense to try to put people on the field when he's on the field. So I think that's really special. But lining these guys up, like Brady Ewing's game, I used to love watching him play. Like, literally did so many cool things. And that's when Coach Chris came in 2005 and was like, Bernie, we're going to do all these things with you. And I was like, yes. And we didn't do them. But it's okay because it's all good. But Brady Ewing was that next evolution. And now all the guys you've seen since, like Chanel, like all these guys, Stokey, like they've all done it. And and there are variations, right? I think some of those guys are big hitters. Some of them are a little bit more shifty, more get out in the pass. But it's exciting to have a fullback back. Is all you can see. I'm juiced up.
Yeah, for sure. And I totally get it. And I think a lot of fans are probably thinking that same thing. I'll finish with this big picture, because I know a lot last year was made of alumni not being overly happy with the way the program has been going these past 2 years. It feels like, and again, we've been accused of it, probably because it's accurate, a little bit too much negativity, that there's a lot of negativity around the program as it is. As a alumni, as an alum of this program, as an alum of this school, what have your impressions been of these first 2 years, and where is your confidence level that it's going to get turned around, whether it be this year showing progress into 2026, or however you view progress?
Good question. I think viewing progress is watching a different brand of football on the field. I think we cannot do wins and losses. last year we watched a lot of 3-and-outs on offense. It was painful to watch punting the football. Our punter was our MVP. Like I never, you never want RJ Morse to be on the field more than like 3 or 4 times. Who was the punter for us a long time ago, or Kenny. Like you don't want these dudes on the field. The special teams guys you want off the field. The whole point is you want the off. So I think it's tough. I think people are upset. It's hard to wrap your head around the old alumni. The game has completely changed. The entire landscape of college has changed. Where even I'm sitting here like, what the hell does this even mean? NIL, getting paid to play football? It's professional sports. There's no brand loyalty. I mean, and I'm not talking for everyone, but it seems like this across college sports in general, is that you can go somewhere else for more money. So there's that, the transfer portal, and what they were set up for was to do good things, right? Nigel Hayes had no money. His parents couldn't come see him. Imagine if he got paid. It would be nice. Transfer portal, if you don't feel comfortable, great, you can leave. But now it's so bastardized that you can go every year somewhere else. There's no real law. There's no rules. So I think it's hard for the older guys to get your head around when you literally came into a culture with Barry. For most of us, was Barry, even like Don Davey was there prior, but then Barry showed up, right? Changed the entire culture, and we were ingrained in this. Like you bought in. Guys who didn't buy in were gone, or they were physically run out of town because JD and they were just going to work you and put you in the worst lift groups. So you had all these guys who bought in, and then you had, sadly, the walk-on culture at Wisconsin was so important. You were giving guys preferred walk-ons, like JJ Watt, Jimmy Leonard. I mean, you can go down the list. There's 50 of them. And now I don't know if that ever happens again, right? Like if you're a walk-on at Wisconsin and you have a breakout year like Jimmy, I'm not going to say Jimmy would have ever left because he's a Wisconsin guy, but imagine a guy like that who has his breakout year. What makes him stay there when some other schools we'll give you $500,000 to come play here? $500,000, $200,000, $50 is a lot of money, when you're a college kid. So I think to get back to the long story short, the entire landscape has changed. We hired a new coach. We tried to do something on everything kind of changed quick. We were coming out of COVID. None of these things were positive for Wisconsin. Sadly, they were just not, the timing was terrible. But first off, I think our offense is going to be better. I think we kept the guys we wanted to keep. I think we have guys who are showing that, losing the left tackle is hard. I'm blanking on his name. Kevin Haywood. So that sucks. But we have Dylan Jones stepping up. We have Dupree. I love Tretch, Vinny Anthony. Vinny Anthony's a lifer, right? How many guys are like him anymore?
That's
so it's not too many. So it's exciting. I think the offense will be on the field more. I just want to see people excited to play football. I don't care if we win or lose. This is not that year. What are we playing? 6 top 20 teams, top 25, 7, 6?
That's a lot. It's a
lot. It's almost every game we're playing a top, at least right now, the way the standings are. I just want to see a step forward. I want to see a physical team who's excited to play football and the brand is better. If I see that, then I'm happy for what, it's going forward. And I think, you've seen my favorite quote of this whole thing is Coach Fick said, it's a grown-ass man's game. And we used to say that in the locker room. It's too much. I'm a grown-ass man, dog. That's all we said. People would say that to the coaches, which was nuts to me. But we would say it every day. And it's true. I mean, football is a grown-ass man's game. And the product on the field is the product. And if you Tanner Kogio, you don't want to be here and maybe it's too much or we're asking you to do too much, then sadly, I feel bad for you because you could have been a pro, but maybe you will be at Houston. I don't know. I didn't even know Houston had a football team. So good luck. But you get it, right, Zach? You gotta produce, you gotta buy in, and you gotta stick around places. I mean, that's the only way to make college football exciting again.
I would agree. And again, there needs to be parameters put in place to help the game. And we'll see if that happens, because I don't think what we're seeing right now is sustainable, because I don't know that fans are going to want to continue to sit here and watch it. And again, if Wisconsin was winning, it'd be a lot different, I think, for us, because we would not be talking about all the negative stuff, but we are talking about negative stuff, except when we're talking about fullbacks. The fullbacks are back, and if no matter what else happens this year, we are going to get a fullback dive for a touchdown, a fullback dive for a first down. And I think that's pretty much what any fullback can ask for, right?
You know what? Seeing the end zone, I saw it 5 times. I probably could have seen it a lot more, but I saw it 5 times, and I was happy. I can name every single one of them. And I was actually on the field when not Leo, Chanel, what was his first name? Why am I
John?
John scored a touchdown at Rutgers. I was standing right there. I mean, on the field, he caught it. I was like, yes, like ecstatic for this dude. It's all that it is. You know, you do your job, and granted, maybe you could score 20 touchdowns in your career, but you know what? They're better guys. I always knew AD was better than me. There's not even a question. So when he scored, I felt like I scored. If it was a 100-yard run or a 1-yard run, I felt like I scored when he scored. But dude, there's nothing better than like running into that end zone. My favorite was outside of scoring at Camp Brando, I ran right through the cheerleaders at Michigan State. We lost that game, so it sucked. But it's nice to run in between, like, you know, these little teen cheerleaders, kind of jump up and down. A lot of fun. But yeah, man, there's nothing better than a fullback scoring. We're going to see a lot of that, I hope. I just want to see scoring and just excitement out there. I mean, you're playing the best sport in the world. People want to knock it. I'm not negative on our team. I mean, there's a lot of things you can talk about in negative. I'm always like, we're going to win every game. This year is going to be pretty tough to do that. But like, I think our D line's better. I think the coaches are looking at things and saying we need to upgrade here, here, and here, and they are doing it consistently. It's much more difficult in the recruiting game, in the transfer portal, but we're doing it. You know, I'll throw to you. We're not a $40 million team. We're never going to be that. So how does any team sustain dudes anymore if you're not going to do that? I mean, it's all culture. First off, Madison is special. How dare you leave this place? Like, I can't even wrap my head around you coming for a year and then leaving, or 2 years, or 5 minutes. I mean, it's amazing. They drink beer all day and eat cheese curds. Like, the unhealthy food is healthy in Wisconsin.
I get what you're saying. I think getting guys to stick around and buy in is difficult right now, more so than probably anything. Getting guys to buy in and understand the challenge, and getting guys to understand that, you know, you're getting paid, and that money can go up and down based on your performance now with some of that rev share. So I think maybe you'll find a little bit more buy-in, but I think that's the biggest problem with college football right now is there isn't a ton of loyalty within guys. And also, you know, when you come in and change the culture like Luke Fickell did, because the culture was tough football, and you bring in an air raid coach. And I know that there's supposed to be a melding of what they did at Cincinnati, even on not just on defense, but on offense as well, and be able to run the ball. And it just didn't happen. So
they did too many things. Too many things happened at one time, and it just didn't work out for us.
Right. And that happens. And now they've got to find a way back, and we'll see if they're able to do it. As you mentioned, the schedule's an absolute beast, but they will have a fullback in the backfield. So I think we're good with that. Hey, Bernie, I really appreciate your time. I love talking to you. There's so many things we could continue to talk about, but I do appreciate you spending a few minutes with me.
Zach, I love hanging out. You didn't even ask my favorite moment. I'll tell you quick.
What
we played 2003 Michigan State. I had a tackle on punt.
Okay.
One of those like, and I think they called it back, so it doesn't actually count. But to me, it counted. So
my memory of punt with you is in practice and getting upset that you had to keep on doing them over and over and right. Wasn't that the story?
We'd go out 20 minutes before, and I was right next to Jason Posiak, and we would do the same thing over and over for 20 minutes. Now, granted, you never saw something you didn't see in practice. I mean, it was like 500 times. Yes, it's a lot of those games. It was hot, man. To go out 20 minutes before is hot, sweating. I'm touching Posiak's butt because that's what they told you to do, so you knew how you were lined up. Posiak, we used to have a good time, but it was not. But hey, listen, one tackle, and that's when Lee Evans had 5 touchdowns. So like what I did didn't matter for 1 second, but that game was super memorable. I mean, you're right. All the games, you know, just so special to be playing Wisconsin football. I mean, that's it. Like there's nothing, and I think that's what the old guys feel is there is nothing better than that. Like, what could possibly be better than playing Wisconsin football? And the NFL's not like that. Like, you know, so many guys aren't Peyton Manning or guys who stick. Look at Saquon Barkley. Like, he didn't stick around. So the NFL's now the college football is like the NFL, but it's to us, my brain. There is that's the peak of like happiness, is being on the field at Wisconsin. So I don't get what's going on. That's what's hard for me. But Zach, I love seeing you, man. I can't wait to see you again in Wisconsin with a spotted cow or a bucket of them.
Yeah. I can't wait as well. I mean, again, you get back for some games. Hopefully we'll be able to hook up when you come in this fall, and hopefully Wisconsin gives you a little bit more to cheer about than it did last year.
Listen, any fullback dive, any fullback touchdowns, a shotgun beer. It's been documented. My wife thinks it's like I'm such an idiot for doing it every time, but it's important. Got to keep that culture up.
I like it. I love it. Bernie, thanks a lot, man.
Anytime, my friend.
All right, there he is. Matt Bernstein, former Wisconsin fullback, joining us here on the camp. All right, there he was. Matt Bernstein, appreciate his time as always. Honestly, as I told him, I could talk to him for hours and hours. Dude's got just ridiculous stories. You've talked to him a number of times for your work as well. He's one of my favorite guys to talk to.
Yeah, Bernie's just a good dude. I just talked to him in the fall for a story on the 20-year anniversary of the Yom Kippur game against Penn State. A legendary performance, as legendary as any running back performance you'll ever see, below Melvin Gordon level. All right, maybe a couple, but I put it in the top 10, no doubt.
It's in the top 10 by far. I mean, 408 is at the top of it, but 130 something, 120 something on like 8 million carries. Like it was a very good, impressive night for Matt Bernstein, highlighted by the fact of obviously what he went through during the day to get himself ready to play in that game. But he also went, and the people just heard this, but you haven't had a chance to listen yet. The thing, it was not even his favorite play of the game. Like when he hurdled the guy and everything, it wasn't even his favorite play of the game. It was a block that a guy made for him. I believe it was Greg Root, he's really good friends with, and made a block, and it was like that was the play of the game for him. I assume he told you that too.
Very much so. Those guys have been best buds for a long time. And it was the play that showed Bernstein that he was going to have a huge day, because he was like, if we can do that against Penn State, and I'm running, I don't know what he runs at 40 in, maybe 5.5. I'm sure he can still beat me. But he knew it was going to be a big day. Greg Root, by the way, all-time quote. I did this story when Barry Alvarez retired from being the athletic director, but the story goes that Greg Root was smoking some dope, because Greg told me this, and he ended up like, I don't know if it was in the sauna or something, but it was only him and Barry, and it was after he had just, I think, maybe failed a drug test or something like that. You can go read the story, but Barry went up to him and said, "You don't pull enough rope to be smoking that dope." So all-time line from an all-time coach.
That is really good. When I was looking for a picture of Bernie, I found his RAS score. Do you want like, which is what does it stand for? Either way, it's how you determine athletic ability, or that's how they do it for the draft. A good score is like, a perfect score is like 10. What do you think it's his relative athletic score. That's what RAS stands for. What do you think his was?
Relative athletic score, damn near 10. I'm gonna say 9.9.
Relative, like 10 is the best.
Yeah.
3.18.
He was a running back in high school who ran for like 9 million yards, so I just figured it would be high.
A 4.94 40-yard dash.
Okay. Sub 5. That's all that matters.
At 260 pounds. So a vertical 29.5.
That's not bad.
His broad jump was 9.2. So yeah, he got his 40-yard dash. He got up to 19.8 miles per hour. So he was flying. I don't want to be on that tracks when he's coming through. But love Bernie. We'll be doing some more of those here over the next few weeks with some other guys. But wanted to close the show up with Wisconsin getting commit number 7 of the commit number 7 in the class of 2026 in 3-star linebacker Aden Reeder out of Cincinnati. Wisconsin goes back into Luke Fickell's area and gets this linebacker. He's the second defensive player and the first linebacker in the class.
6'3", 210 pounds, and picked Wisconsin over Minnesota and Iowa, which were a couple other schools that he planned to take officials to. So obviously a Big Ten caliber linebacker, and Wisconsin or Fickell has really hit Ohio hard. I think this is the 4th Ohio player in the last 2 classes. Indiana is another state where they've had a lot of success. And I've heard some Badgers fans, at least maybe a couple months ago, express some concern about where things stood in terms of a low number of commits. But this is closing time right now. All these coaches have been on the road like the last 2 weeks, basically, since the start of May. Official visit season it comes in late May. And by the July, I would expect most of this class to be filled. Like, I know we'll probably talk about the official visit season when it gets here, but there are more than 40 players who are going to be here, most of them uncommitted at all the different positions. So this is a critical time in putting together this 2026 class. And they had so much success, at least from a ranking standpoint, the last 2 years. So we've seen sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't, but there's a lot of talent and young guys that are putting themselves in position to be on the field. So I know Wisconsin wants to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, they obviously do. The class right now, according to the 24/7 composite, is 38th in the country with 7 commits. They have an opportunity to certainly raise that over the next 6 weeks. 5-6 weeks, last weekend of May, and then into much of June. So we'll see how it plays out, and we'll obviously break it all down. But we'll be back next week. Have hopefully some more stuff to talk about. Jesse, thank you very much. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I wanted to run this past you because I got a message, and we've talked not off air, but while we're just shooting the shit. There's a lot of negativity around the program, right? That's what happens these last 2 years. I got a message from somebody asking if we could do a positive show that focused on the best possible outcomes, like the best, like not what we think is going to happen, but what's the best the Badgers could do this fall. And so we're going to do that. Our next show, we're going to flip it around here. We're not going to be negative at all. We're going to do the best case scenarios. They are not going to be our official predictions, but what's the best case scenario for Wisconsin going into the fall here in 2025. So I'm looking forward to that, because I'll admit, there's a lot of negativity. And I feel like me certainly has gotten caught up in that. But next show, all positivity. You like it?
Yeah, I'm good with it. It's May. There hasn't been a practice yet for fall camp. So this is a great time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Hope spring's eternal.
Yep. So looking forward to that. And we'll take care of that next week. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is. Jesse Temple. You've been listening to The Camp.